My name is Rachel, I'm 38 years old. I divorced 6 years ago and remarried 3 years ago. Both my first husband, Dan, and my current husband, Roy, joined Snow Foods in the same year. Dan and Roy were rivals but worked hard and contributed a lot to the company. I quit my job to marry Dan. And the following year, our daughter Camila was born. Our happy marriage started to crumble after 5 years when Dan fell for a woman 10 years his junior, Nancy. He stopped coming home, and I decided to divorce him. I raised Camila as a single mother. When Dan was cheating, Roy, concerned, reached out to me, and we started talking. Eventually, we remarried. Roy, not revealing he was the son of the company's president, surprised me with this fact only after our marriage. It turned out to be a fairy tale marriage. Camila and I lived a luxurious life. Recently, we went skiing in Switzerland, where Camila got injured and now uses a wheelchair. One day, while dropping Camila at school, I saw Dan, who left me for his mistress years ago. It's funny, thinking it's a miracle she even got remarried, but seeing her child, it turns out her life is still at rock bottom. He mocked my life, but then Roy arrived in a luxury car, leaving Dan pale.
What? Roy is who? Driving such a luxury car?
Roy is the son of the president of Snow Foods. He's about to become the youngest president of the company. What a twist. I wanted to share how I got to this happy life.
It's pretty big, huh? Didn't it feel much bigger than when we first came for the interview?
Well, it's an established food company, never declining and even listed top many. Dan, Roy, and I joined the major food company Snow Foods and were assigned to the PR department. After our first day at work, we planned to go out for drinks to bond, but Dan was mostly talking by himself.
By the way, I heard you grew up abroad, Roy.
I was born and raised here. What about you, Rachel? I studied it more in the Global Liberal Arts department at university.
Wow, I can't speak it at all, wonder how I got hired. Well, that's luck for me.
Dan, Roy, and I often went out for drinks as colleagues. But as Dan grew more ambitious, he became jealous of Roy's success and saw him as a rival. Doesn't it seem like Roy is favored by the bosses? He's even on the cover of our PR magazine. Roy's tall and good-looking. I admit that. But is it right for an employee to be like a model? Roy is the face of the company, he's always out there working. I could do better than Roy if given the chance. I don't want to lose to Roy, in work or in my personal life. Roy doesn't care about winning or losing. He's just doing what's asked, and he actually doesn't like being treated as just a visual. Do you and Roy go out for drinks, just the two of you? Well, if he asks me. Around this time, it seemed like Dan had started to have feelings for me. I kind of knew, but since there were no clear words or actions, I pretended not to notice. The three of us, Dan, Roy, and I, became closer both in work and personally, challenging and inspiring each other as time went by. About 2 years after joining Snow Foods, Dan asked me out. What should I do? How should I respond? Maybe it was a bit naughty of me, but I talked to Roy about Dan. If you don't dislike him, why not go out with him? At least, I respect Dan and think he's a good guy. I believe he can make you happy. Over those 2 years, I found Dan to be a person of intense, momentary passion. That's why it was scary, he tended to get deeply involved in things. But I honestly accepted Dan's feelings and gave him the okay. Dan and I got married when we were 25. I quit my job and became a homemaker. It's a shame you're leaving. You had the potential to be a real career woman. You always cared about the little things nobody noticed, finishing everything even before being asked. Such efficiency. It's really a waste. Thank you. You're the only one who appreciates me. Call me anytime if you need anything. Well, considering it's Dan, I think he'll take good care of you. If he ever cheats, I'll be there to give him a piece of my mind. Little did I know, I'd recall these light words from Roy.
Hey, if you're gonna be late, at least call. Dinner's getting wasted. Stop nagging me. It's because you always complain that I don't want to come home. Tomorrow's Camila's school event. You didn't forget, did you?
Tomorrow? I've got plans, but I can't make them.
What? I told you to keep your schedule free way back. Camila's looking forward to you being there.
6 years into my marriage with Dan. Our daughter Camila turned 5. Next year, she'll be in elementary school. Dan, who used to be so fond of children, had changed completely. What made him this way? I already knew the reason. Dan was boldly enjoying his time with his mistress. This mistress was shameless, trying to one-up me, his wife.
Oh, tomorrow's the birthday of your mistress, right? You withdrew savings to buy her a brand name accessory. Nancy was boasting about it on social media. Nancy's family is rich, right? Her dad's a company president. So why are you footing the bill? Are you being scammed? Gross, you're looking into it?
I got this information about Dan from a junior colleague, Smith, at Snow Foods. For some reason, she took a liking to me, saying she admired me, the only junior who did. Apparently, Dan was proud of having a mistress and bragged about it. Even things I didn't ask to know. I heard you met her at her coffee shop at the station. You thought she was cute, so you gave her his number, hoping for a chance, and she reached out. She must be either not used to attention or overly confident. And she's still in her 20s, young. I don't think she's seriously into you. I'm not washed up yet. Dan had completely taken an obstinate stance. Maybe he thought it was easier to have his affair out in the open, with his wife's knowledge. Every day, going to that shop, wooing her, it paid off, huh? Do you realize you often get so obsessed with one thing that you become blind to everything else? I've always been devoted like that. Did you know your mistress has been harassing me? It's pretty bad, like defamation. I think this could be a legal case if I ask a lawyer. She writes on my social media that I'm a terrible old woman, not doing housework, just fooling around, cheating in secret. She's not just spreading lies, she's inventing things out of thin air. Other moms from Camila's kindergarten saw it, and now I'm treated like a pariah. If this keeps up, I'm gonna take action. Reacting to such trivial things, getting all worked up. Are you a child or what? Stop making a fuss, it's exhausting. That's it, I'm taking a shower and going to bed. That's how Dan escapes, but the situation gets more serious. Rachel? It's me, Roy. A sudden call from Roy. Since I left the company, we've barely spoken. Dan never talked about work, let alone Roy. Roy! Long time no see. How have you been? Actually, these past few days, Dan's been absent from work without notice. I thought maybe he was sick. He hadn't come home for a few days, but skipping work too? But I couldn't tell Roy about our embarrassing situation. Maybe he is sick. I'm sorry, I'll tell him to contact the company. Are you okay? Just that one question nearly brought me to tears. I wanted to confide everything in Roy, for someone to sympathize and comfort me. If he's going to be sick for a while, I really need him to let me know. Right now, Dan's leading a big project with me and 3 others. Without him, we can't get the work done. I'm really sorry for causing trouble. That's unfortunate. We can't move forward without that decision. Should I take it that Dan's stepping down from this project? Understood, I'll talk to Dan. This was a major problem, impacting his work too. I couldn't do anything more to help. I tried calling Dan, not expecting him to answer. I've sent multiple emails, but he's been ignoring them and he hasn't been answering my calls. Hello? Who is this? It wasn't Dan, but his mistress on the phone. Oh, are you his wife? Dan's in the shower and can't come to the phone. But I can pass on a message. Is my husband staying at your place? Yeah, he's here most of the time, though sometimes we stay at a hotel. Are you keeping him from going to work? Are you the controlling type? Dan's got a new job lined up, so he's supposed to be quitting his current one.
What? I haven't heard anything about that.
Maybe he can't tell you the truth.
You get scared when you're angry, right? Dan said he's often not allowed in the house and wanders the streets at night.
Feeding lies to his mistress, playing the unhappy husband. A typical move for a cheating spouse.
My dad owns a business. Dan's gonna take over as the boss soon. It's too good an opportunity to pass up. I don't care if it's a top company or whatever, it's just a life of being employed. If you're a man, you should have the hunger to be at the top, right?
Can you, his wife, make that happen?
That's the question. I can make Dan the president. That's part of my charm.
Nancy's father's business is a small cafe, right in front of the station. They sell sandwiches with various fillings. Currently, they have a few stores, but they're planning to expand as a chain. Would becoming president of such a business really make Dan happy? It's so different from the ideals he had when he first joined the company.
Why won't you just sign the divorce papers? Dan's not coming home or going to work. What's the point of staying married to him? It's not so easy to just get divorced. We have a daughter, after all. You're the one keeping Dan tied down, aren't you?
What?
That's ridiculous. Dan was the one who pursued me so passionately, I just went along with it. I'm with him because he does whatever I say. I never intended to marry, but my dad was looking for a successor. And Dan just happened to be there at the right time. Isn't Dan lucky? Getting to marry a woman 10 years younger and become a president.
No wonder he doesn't want to go back to you. I can almost see Nancy's smug face. Once I knew her name, I checked her social media. She comes off as a lively, show-off type, always flaunting her so-called fulfilling life. As a president's daughter, she wears expensive things, which she brags about online. It seems she's supported by young women who wish to be like her.
Sorry to bother you again. Today, Dan contacted me, saying he wants to resign. He probably hired one of those popular resignation services. Not very manly of him, if you ask me. So he's resigned, but Rachel, what's your plan with Dan?
I guess we're probably heading for divorce.
Divorce? Really?
Dan apparently doesn't plan to come home anymore. He's been at Nancy's for nearly a month, no contact, not coming home.
What? It's come to that? That's serious.
Our daughter is still in kindergarten, about to start elementary school. Divorce would hurt her. I thought about trying to make it work, but it seems impossible now. Dan's completely turned towards Nancy.
Once Dan makes up his mind, he doesn't listen to anyone else.
That's why he's thrown everything away for Nancy. Kind of like eloping, I guess.
If there's anything I can do, just say the word.
Thanks. Since then, I've found myself consulting Roy on various matters. Even when I signed the divorce papers, I ended up calling Roy. I'm disappointed in Dan. He promised he'd never cheat.
Aren't you thinking about marriage, Roy? Got anyone in mind?
No one. I think I'm good with marriage for now. Maybe when I'm around 40. I don't really have any ideals or wishes regarding marriage. Roy's handsome and has a great personality, so of course, he's popular. But he never shows off or brags. I wonder what kind of woman Roy will eventually marry. I was just curious. Even after my divorce from Dan was finalized, junior colleague Smith kept sending me gossip. Smith, who loves gossip, is known as the entertainment reporter of Snow Foods.
Oh, I'm tired. What's for dinner?
Let's order something. I'm tired too. Dan, now formally married to Nancy, is struggling with the business of the coffee shop, entrusted to him by Nancy's father. Dan essentially inherited a business that was already stagnating and becoming financially unstable. Initially, he was enthusiastic and worked hard to turn the shop around. But he couldn't really get into it because he found the work uninteresting.
You're tired because you're out playing around, aren't you? You wanted to do housework perfectly and even quit working at the shop, but in the end, you didn't do any housework, did you? I'm only 22, you know? My friends are all still single, and I'm not going to be the only one tied down at home.
Dan and Nancy's marriage was already showing signs of strain. 3 years have passed since my divorce from Dan and his marriage to Nancy. Somehow, they're still together.
Wow, here?
It's no wonder Camila was surprised. I was even more so. Camila and I were standing at the gate of Roy's family home, having been invited over. Roy's house was a mansion.
Hey, welcome.
Roy, ever charming even in private, warmly welcomed Camila and me. Meeting Roy's parents and having a pleasant conversation with them, I finally realized.
Your father is the president of Snow Foods, isn't he? You didn't use the same surname to avoid being recognized as the president's son, right?
I can't just become president all of a sudden. I want to work from the ground up, at the same level as the employees.
My father says I still have a lot to learn.
I myself feel that I need more experience and knowledge. I'm really sorry for keeping this a secret. Isn't this like striking gold? I had recently been proposed to by Roy, and today, we were meeting his parents for formal introductions.
I feel so honored, being a divorcee with a daughter.
Why are you so formal? Just be yourself, Rachel. Roy lightened the mood, and we spent the day with smiles. Roy had always been there to listen whenever I had issues with Dan. It was inevitable that our relationship grew closer. My biggest concern about remarrying was Camila. Did she need a new father?
Why does Roy have to leave? He should just stay with us all the time.
It was Camila who first brought it up. Her memories with Dan were being overwritten by those with Roy, elevating his place in her heart. Then one day, Camila called Roy Daddy and said she'd be happy if he became her dad. That's how Roy and I started preparing for our marriage.
What? Rachel and Roy are getting married?
That was Dan's first reaction when Smith, the well-informed junior colleague, told him about our wedding.
Since when? Rachel doesn't like Roy's type, does she? She said he's tall but too skinny and unreliable. She should be with someone like me who goes to the gym and can protect her when needed.
Roy and I are complete opposites.
Rachel's tastes are all over the place. She'll settle for any guy who says he loves her. She's not especially beautiful, and she has a kid, right?
Dan continued.
And she's in her mid-30s. Young and beautiful women without kids are obviously better. What is Roy thinking? With his looks, brains, and ability, why would he marry a divorced woman with a child? What's his angle? They'll split up soon. Maybe last 3 years. Me and Nancy?
Dan was evasive when it came to his own matters. But Smith, the junior colleague, skillfully drew out the conversation.
After all, even if it's a coffee shop, the prices are considered high. The sandwiches are bigger than those in coffee chains and have more varieties of fillings. The taste isn't bad at all. That's why we keep the prices high, but the customers don't seem to get it. They wonder why good food can't be cheap. But the scale is just too different. I used to work at Snow Foods, a big food company, you know? Dealing with $7 sandwiches is just not my thing. How's it going with Nancy? You ask?
Despite the ominous signs from the beginning of their marriage, they've managed to last for 3 years.
Well, she's young, you know. Nancy has a wide and extensive social circle. There's no way she'll listen if I tell her not to go out and party. She just pushed her father's company onto me and now acts like she doesn't care. We're like a couple in name only, a mask marriage. I'm the type who gets passionate fast but also cools off quickly. Nancy wouldn't be able to leave me. I took over a struggling onigiri shop, so technically, she should be grateful to me. Yet, she doesn't do any housework and there's no marital life.
What?
Hiring a housekeeper? Impossible, impossible. Nancy's family isn't that rich. President or not, it varies. Anyone can claim to be one. Just so you know, she's not the president you might imagine.
I'm amazed how he can blabber so much to a junior colleague. Ranting about work or complaining about his wife is common, but hearing it through someone else doubles the annoyance. And Dan is clearly bothered by my happiness with Roy. He's been complaining about my remarrying Roy, but he's not able to accept it. 3 more years have passed since then.
Sorry to call out of the blue. I have something important to discuss.
It had been a long time since I heard from Dan. Probably a year.
I'd like permission to see Camila once a month. I'd hire a lawyer, but I don't have the money, so I wanted to talk directly.
His sudden desire to see Camila now is too convenient. He had never mentioned such a thing in the past 6 years. Probably, something went wrong with Nancy, and he remembered Camila like an afterthought. I later learned that Dan was indeed under a lot of pressure in both his work and home life. I'll have to ask Camila.
She barely remembers you since you parted ways before she started elementary school. Now she's close with Roy. If she doesn't want to, you'll have to give up, okay? What does Camila say about me?
What? We don't talk about you at all. How conceited are you? When I asked Camila, she said she didn't want to see Dan. I honestly conveyed this to Dan.
Did Camila really say that? Or did you make her say it? Or maybe you're lying to me?
What can I do to make you believe me? Dan had no answer to that. After a while, I didn't hear from him, so I assumed he had given up on meeting Camila. But then, today, he was waiting at Camila's school gate. He misunderstood Camila's use of a wheelchair, thinking she was disabled. Camila was just recovering from an injury she got while skiing in Switzerland. Dan made a very rude comment.
What's going on?
Roy, arriving in his luxury car to pick up Camila, quickly came to our aid.
What? Why such a luxury car? Who is Roy, anyway?
Roy is the son of the president of Snow Foods. It's almost decided that he'll take over and become the president soon.
What? Roy is the son of the president? He never even hinted at that. Why didn't he tell us? Was it because he thought we would act differently around the president's son? Don't flatter yourself. Even changing his name, wanting to start from the bottom in his own company is just wrong. He should have gone to another company. If he doesn't have the guts for that, he shouldn't become president. Really, Roy is too soft.
Dan vented his frustrations about Roy. Even when he was married to me, he always complained about Roy. He doesn't realize how hard it is to listen to him. What are you doing here? If you have no business, please leave. I can call the police on a suspicious person. Are you trying to show off in front of Rachel? It's not working at all. Excuse me. I came to see Camila. She's my child, I have a right to see her.
I already told you, Camila doesn't want to meet you.
Is that really true? Or did you just tell her to say that?
I don't want to let you see her either. I find you disgusting for running off to your mistress, leaving little Camila behind. You hardly ever came to Camila's kindergarten events. Do you know how lonely she felt? Do you know what she said when she first wore her school backpack? She wondered if her dad would be happy. Since that day, she stopped talking about you.
Just thinking about Camila back then brings tears to my eyes.
I was working a day job and also as a web writer at home to secure income. I barely had time to talk to Camila after all the housework.
So you married Roy for his money?
I didn't know Roy's father was the president until our marriage was decided. I was drawn to Roy's kindness and inclusiveness. Even if he wasn't the son of a president, I would have married him.
Were you and Roy dating since you joined the company as new employees? Such an assumption is baseless. He's just trying to find a way to make himself look better.
Come to think of it, there are many things that make sense now. You started dating me when you had a fight with Roy, and then we got married. Isn't that the real story? That's quite an imaginative story. But Roy and I live our lives without shame.
So, you're just a man-eater, huh? And you always pick the easy options.
Joined the PR department with 3 people and married 2 of them. Expand your horizons. And you? You think you did something to be proud of? Chasing after a woman 10 years younger, abandoning Camila. Isn't she tired of you already? You can't entertain anyone. You enjoy the chase, but once you have them, you're satisfied. The don't feed the fish you've caught logic.
It's a waste of time talking to you. Excuse me.
Running away, huh? You can't talk on my level. I'm not interested in small fish. I heard your shop is in trouble. Good luck with being a president. I have bigger business plans, not interested in $7 businesses.
Roy had the final word. I got too emotional. The biggest punishment for Dan, who abandoned everything for his mistress, is that he will never see his daughter again. As Roy said, the coffee shop went bankrupt. Dan was left with debts after becoming the president. Nancy's father planned it all, to pass the failing business to Dan and escape the debts. Dan was fooled by his own ulterior motives. Nancy, who got a new boyfriend, left a divorce note and left. And there's happy news for me. I'm pregnant with Roy's child. It's a late pregnancy, but we're overjoyed. Roy's parents are happy about their grandchild. And most importantly, Camila is delighted. I don't regret marrying Dan. He gave me the greatest treasure, Camila.